Hey y'all, how's it going? It's Chey, and today I'm here with a challenge. A book challenge. Several book challenges. It is currently the first day of June. Happy first day of June, everybody. It is also my birth month, which is the most important part of the month, obviously. My birthday is June 11th, and I have a book problem. I have a book hoarding problem, and so of course for my birthday I want to go book shopping to get more books to make my book hoarding problem worse. To make myself feel a little bit better about that, I need to get rid of some of my books. And one of the stores that we're going to be going to for my birthday is a secondhand store where you can turn in books for store credit or just cash. And so I have some books here that have been on my TBR for a while, have been sitting on my shelf for a long time, just kind of taking up space. And I just can't get rid of them. I can't unhaul them because I feel like if I spent money on them, I need to at least try to read them. I know that's not true and I shouldn't have an obligation to try and read them, but that's just how I work. I'm like, but what if I end up loving it?
What if it's my new fave?
You know, I'm ridiculous. I know it's stupid, but I can't help it. I have several books that I want to try and finish in 11 days, starting today, before my birthday, to see if I actually want to take them to the store to sell them. The plan, we have 4 books that I need to read in 11 days. Now I know a lot of YouTubers, or especially booktubers that I watch and I love, could like plow through these in a heartbeat, but I have ADHD, first of all, if I haven't talked about that enough, and I also have a job, an internship that takes up a lot of my time, and I also just have other stuff in my life, as people do. It is going to be a challenge to try and finish these 4 in 11 days, but I'm going to try my best. I believe I can do it. I'm just going to quickly go through the books and tell you a little bit about them. First book we have is called The Song Machine Inside the Hit Factory by John Seabrook, and it's just a book about the music industry and about really current pop music, how current hits are getting made, especially by a lot of the same writers like Max Martin. I love the music industry, it's my life. Don't know if you can tell my Beartooth shrine over here, I love music. A Day to Remember Flags, I have records all right there. So any book about music or the music industry, I'm there. I have already started this, and I'm on page 50, so a little bit in, but still got a ways to go. It's almost about 300 pages. The next book is called The Fifth Heart, which has been on my shelf for a very long time. It's by Dan Simmons, and it's this wonderful floppy paperback. I almost just want to keep it for the cover and the floppiness. It's about Sherlock Holmes and Henry James, and a crossover, and it's sort of meta because they start to realize that they're kind of fictional characters, and they're like, how can this be? So it's interesting, but I don't know if it's going to be interesting for me to keep it after I read it. It may be something that I unhaul and buy again in a few years, but I want to get it read before I sell it. And it's been on my shelf for a while because I can't finish it. Like a lot of my hobbies or interests, thanks, neurodivergency. But I am this far into it. I'm in part 2, and page 270 of like 600. So the third book is The Republic of Rock by Michael J. Kramer. This one I am pretty far into just because I wanted to truck through it. I'm on page 152 of I think like 220. It's about music and citizenships in the 60s counterculture. It's a very academic kind of read. I'll go into more of that later. The last book is one that I have not started, the only one I have not started. It's the B-side, The Death of Tin Pan Alley and the Rebirth of the Great American Song by Ben Yagoda. Tin Pan Alley is that one gray area, I mean one amongst many, but a gray area in my music history knowledge I just don't have enough knowledge of. Most of my knowledge resides in classic rock, metal, country. This will hopefully fill in a lot of gaps in my knowledge. It looks interesting, but again, I don't know if it's so interesting as to keep. I may glean a lot from this, but I think someone would probably enjoy this or treasure this a lot more than I will. So those are the 4 books that I hope to get through in 11 days. I think I can do it because, like I said, I am already started in most of these. Tin Pan Alley, this one looks pretty quick. I think it's sub 300 pages. Yeah, it's a little over 250. So I think it can be done if I pace myself. The plan, I have until June 11th to read all of these books. think it can be done. I know it can be done. We're gonna do it, Chey. Promise to future Chey. We're gonna get it done.
Made a mess of your floor, man, but it's worth it.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm back because I have finished Michael Kramer's The Republic of Rock, Music and Citizenship in the 60s Counterculture. And I have notes. I have a lot of notes. Overall, gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, so I'm going to start with the positives. To begin with, this book is crazy interesting for anyone who has any inkling of interest in the 60s counterculture, especially with rock music and the hippie movement. Michael J. Kramer outdid himself on all of the research and statistics and facts in here. Half the book is like footnotes, just context and databases, notes upon notes upon notes. It is incredible how much work was put into this book to research and really get it right, and it shows in the most impressive way. Captivating to read all the way through, not just because I have an interest in the subject, but because another highlight of this book, it covers a majority about what is not really talked about in 60s counterculture. So of course, a lot of people know Woodstock, a lot of people know the hippie movements, and even more people I think would generally know about San Francisco. But Michael J. Kramer does a really impressive job of filling this book with events, people, and interconnections that aren't really talked about. There was a ton of stuff in here that I have never even heard of. My favorite chapters were probably the ones on Vietnam and the Wild West Festival. The Wild West Festival was particularly interesting because it was sort of the counterpart to Woodstock that no one ever talks about, that again, I've never even heard of. It was an attempt in San Francisco to basically try and make like a arts festival that would encourage the community to come together and showcase all their art and inspire each other and build upon each other in the cultural context of saying, let's just move forward in this new way of interaction and inspiration. He did a really great job going in depth into the planning of the festival, who was involved, how it interconnected with other events in counterculture, and ultimately how it all fell apart and why it was overshadowed in favor of Woodstock. This book ultimately adds a lot of new information and insights to the conversation about 60s counterculture. Kramer has great insights into how all of these events, peoples, and ideas interconnected. It's truly fascinating, and I honestly see myself talking about this book with people for years to come. The Vietnam War chapter especially talked about almost the pirate kind of radio stations that evolved with the GIs in the US over in Vietnam. But he goes in depth into the role of hip militarism and hip capitalism, and its role in trying to make the GIs more complicit with their station and being drafted into the US military. Kramer doesn't shy away from the complexities in this book, of which there are many, which is a good thing, because that time period in US American history was a nightmare, just like almost every other time period in American history. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get into my criticism of this book, because it is essentially one giant thing that leaps over into my general larger rant towards academia. This book is not very accessible, I think, to a general audience. It's very academia-centered. It fits extremely well in that context. As I said, it's well-researched, well-stated, a lot of interesting insights. As I said, this relates to my more general rant towards academia. He has these incredible insights, and it takes forever to get to them. Sentences upon sentences that delve into paragraphs using this flowery, languishing, loaded academic prose. And then, all of a sudden, he sums it all up into one sentence that doesn't take away from any of the complexity he was trying to get to, but still makes it plain and easy to understand. And I'm like, why didn't you do that in the first place? This book could have been 50 to 75 pages shorter. It sounds like he was trying to hit a word limit, or trying to impress the president of Oxford in 1891. The reason that's a problem, not only with this book, but with so much larger academia in general, is because when you use loaded academic prose, and if you've read any academic papers whatsoever, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when they take paragraphs to get to the point. The problem with that is it sounds like you're trying to fill a word count, not like you actually know what you're talking about. Because if you knew what you were talking about, you'd get to the point. You could say it like that. And that's a major problem, because he does know what he's talking about. He has a ton of facts and statistics and really good insight into the complexities, into the intersections of how this all connects and builds upon each other. But it's hidden under all this really heavy academic prose, except for the gleaming bits of light where he does finally sum it up into one or two sentences. And you're like, oh, there it is. Because it makes you go, okay, we know he can do this. We know he really has a great perspective on all these events and all these people. And it's just hidden. Which, don't get me wrong, sometimes it can be needed, especially to use loaded terms like hip capitalism or hip militarism. And Kramer does a great job of explaining those loaded terms before he uses them, and he doesn't just use them willy-nilly. Here's an example of when he actually gets to the point. Happiness came to GIs as people rather than soldiers, and it came from relishing a song whose sound and lyrics were at their core about failure, fatigue, and resignation. Gets the point across, makes sense, totally get what you were saying, we can move on. Overall, I wouldn't say it detracts from the book in any way. I know I just made that big rant, but that's something that's been bottling up inside of me all 4 years that I was at Georgetown, because I had to read a lot of papers like this, a lot of books like this, where it just made me infuriated when I saw this verbose prose, and I'm like, just get to the point. You have all these great ideas and this interesting subject matter, and you're just hiding it. So, again, I wouldn't say it totally takes away from the book, just if you're going to get into this book, be prepared that you may have to take it a little bit more slowly, read some things out loud to yourself. I did, but maybe that's just me and my weird brain personally. But it's definitely a book worth taking your time with, because there's so much information in here that you really are doing a favor to yourself by taking the time to actually absorb and learn all of it. I know that was a really loaded criticism for all the praise that I'm giving this book. As someone who was raised in the public school system and a first-generation college student, academic language was something I extremely struggled with when I went to Georgetown, and I didn't get a lot of help with it except for the few very kind professors who helped me learn how to navigate it. So I get very defensive when it comes to helping books be accessible to the general public, and I won't apologize for it, because knowledge like this should be accessible to everyone because it's so fascinating, so interesting, and we can all learn a lot from it. We all deserve to. So again, 4 out of 5 stars. So much interesting information in this book, and I actually took notes on it, and I'm going to do further in-depth research on my own just out of curiosity, but I still will be handing this book off to the secondhand store because I think someone else will get a lot more enjoyment out of it, though I will not deny the possibility of picking this book back up in the future. Hey y'all, good morning. It is Sunday, June 5th. It's about noon, and I just wanted to pop in with some quick reading updates before I get back into reading. Right now, I'm about 6 days out from my birthday, and we're doing well so far. I had 4 books that I wanted to read. I've gotten 1 done, which my summary should be the clip right before this one. Next one that I'm working on finishing is The Song Machine. I just did a little 20-minute sprint where I read about 20 pages that I didn't vlog, but it was good. Got me in the mood to read for the rest of the day. I've got about 100 more pages left to go. That much left. I just read the chapter about Rihanna and how they made Umbrella and how they found Rihanna. Probably gonna finish this one today, if not tomorrow, because fly through it pretty fast. Then, I have read a lot in The Fifth Heart. Really enjoying it. This book's weird because I forget why I put it down, but I put it down for so long, and then when I pick it back up, I'm like, why did I put this down? It's just a fun little happy fictional jaunt. It's nothing that's like mind-blowing to me or I think life-changing, but I do have thoughts on this and I will give them. I actually think I'm probably gonna end up keeping this book because I am just enjoying this fun little jaunt. I read about 150 pages in this one in the last 2 days. I was on about page 300, now I'm almost on 430, I'm on 424. We're getting through it. We're smashing it. So, the goal for today is to finish this book, or at least get as close as possible to finishing this book. Then, probably reading 50 more pages of this, at least. That'll get me within the 150 mark of finishing this one, and maybe even starting this one. I think those are pretty realistic goals for today. I'm not really feeling any major pressure about them. I think I'm in a very good spot to finish all of these before my birthday. Especially even though I have my internship for 2 days this week, which I honestly will probably not feel like reading any of those days, though I do try to read 10 pages a day. Sometimes those days are just impossible. But yeah, it's been a good morning so far. It's really sunny, pretty outside. I took a little 30-minute walk, had a chat with my boyfriend, came back in, and I've mostly been watching 80s music videos for the majority of the morning. Like I said, did my 20-minute reading sprint, and it's put me in a great mood to do some reading for the rest of the day. So let's get back to it. Forgot to say that I am really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying every book that I've read so far. Really am enjoying this. I do have some thoughts on it. We're gonna see where it takes us. Okay, now I'm gonna go get some lunch. Then I'm gonna go outside and do some more reading.
So I am confusion.
Hey y'all, how's it going? I am back because I just had a nice little sitting outside reading moment and I finished The Song Machine Inside the Hit Factory by John Seabrook. Overall, I gave this book a 4-star rating. This book was really well researched, really well written, really accessible and easy to understand. I think pretty much anybody can read this book. Even if you don't have any music knowledge whatsoever about the industry, history, pop artists. Very accessible, very easy to read, at least in my opinion. So I really flew through it. And as someone who's not as experienced in the pop genre, for a long time I was one of those I want nothing to do with pop music girlies. But recently I've sort of delved into it in my more recent years saying, okay, this is pretty good. I definitely appreciate it a lot more and I'm a lot more open about it. I understood a lot of the mechanics in here about the music industry in general, but on the pop side of things, really revealing in how the hit machine factory works and how pop music today is what it is in terms of hits, in terms of artists, in terms of chart toppers. The main thing that John Seabrook does extremely well, which is important for a nonfiction book like this, is research. John Seabrook takes care to delve into the biography of everyone who's mentioned in this book, especially the artists. There's extensive chapters on various artists who are big names in the pop music industry, like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. Two bands that I know a lot about, as in have heard a lot of, but never knew anything of biography-wise. No clue whatsoever. So really cool to pick all that up from this book. He also takes the time to go and interview as many of these people as possible to get their first-hand perspective, which is a breath of fresh air instead of just including statistics and quotes from articles and magazines. There's plenty of that enough in here, but it's so refreshing to actually hear from the people themselves. I would say that's definitely my biggest applause for this book, is the interweaving that John Seabrook does between the people and the songs and the albums and how the whole process works and how it continues to evolve over the years and include all of these people in these songs and how it builds off of each other. He makes it so effortless and so digestible, really easy to understand and really enlightening. He uses a lot of examples going on a case-by-case basis of various hits. Like I mentioned earlier, he goes through Rihanna and Umbrella. He also goes through Katy Perry's Roar and Teenage Dream. A lot of case studies and seeing how these artists came to be or how these songs came to be and really how they interconnect. Overall, I think John Seabrook does a really good job going into the details of the people who make this industry possible. You can really see how these people are interconnected through countries, throughout the years especially. The music industry, I have really learned, is who you know. And not in a nepotism sort of way, but just, you know this person who does this thing, and this person can do that thing really well, and you may be doing this one thing, and like, hey, you remember that guy? He can do that really well. Bring him in, and then he knows 5 more people. It's all about, unfortunately, networking, which he covers really well. He's also not afraid to get into the nitty-gritty background of these people and these songs and these albums. It's really aesthetically almost pleasing in a way to see how it all comes together, at least to my little history nerd brain. Now, that being said, I do have a few contentions with this book. This book was published in 2015. Totally fine. It's almost 10 years old by this point. I think for the time that it was published, it was as accurate as it could aptly be. I'm going to preface this by going ahead and adding a disclaimer that all of my criticisms are just nitpicky things that are personal to me. They're not actual resounding, hammering, pounding criticisms of this book. Those, I have none for this book. It's well written, well done, well researched. That being said, here are my nitpicky criticisms, because I can. So, on the studio side, John Seabrook mentions about session musicians and how producers who beat makers have put session drummers out of business. Now this may be my bias, but I'm an audio engineer. I've done a lot of work in Nashville, done a lot of Nashville sessions. I can aptly tell you that session drummers have not gone out of business. They are not as strong a workforce as I'm sure they were in the 80s, or especially in the 60s, or in the 50s with, you know, the Wrecking Crew, the Funk Brothers, all the great session bands. But they are not out of business. And here's my second nitpicky thing about session musicians in this book. Okay, here it is. It is also worth noting who isn't in the room when track and hook songs are made. Large-bellied men with their beer cans perched precariously on the lip of music stands. Session musicians, to paint them in stereotype, are nowhere to be seen. Where are they? The 2 or 3 at the very top of their game might be working somewhere, but most of them are unemployed trying to make ends meet by giving guitar lessons. Now, he does, to his credit, he mentions to paint them in a stereotype. But again, I'm being nitpicky because I can't be. I work with a lot of session musicians, especially in Nashville. They have always been the most professional, put-together people I have ever met in my life. That's not to say that they can't have fun, that's not to say they can't be silly or goofy, but they are at the top of their game for a reason. And again, that may be sort of painting in my very Nashville top-of-their-game stereotype. You should also contrast that with how many of them are just like classical performers, where they are about their craft, they are very professional, they are where they are for a reason. I think it's only fair to them. He continuously mentions the tidbit that it doesn't matter whether you like a song or not, the more you hear it, the more you are apt to like it. I call BS on that. For me, that's absolutely not true. It does take about 2 or 3 times of me hearing a song for me to decide whether I like it or not, usually. But then if I decide I don't like it, the more I hear it, the angrier I get. Because I'm like, I don't want to waste my time listening to this song. I'd rather be listening to something that I actually like. So that is not true in my case. So if you're interested at all in the pop music industry, or the music industry in general, separate or conjunction things, definitely recommend this book for an easy but informative read. Now we're going to get back to The Fifth Heart. Currently I'm on page 440. I hope to be at about 500 by the end of today, but again, no big deal if I'm not. Pretty happy with my progress in this so far. And I think I'm going to wait till tomorrow to start the 4th book, just to give myself a little bit of a break today. I think I'm actually going to even relax and watch a movie now, or do some pre-editing. Good Wednesday morning, y'all. Hope you're doing well. I'm wearing a shawl because even though it's almost the middle of June, in Tennessee, the summer decided to be chilly this morning. So I didn't vlog any yesterday about any of my reading because I sort of got into a hyperfixation about cleaning, and I completely dusted and rearranged all of those shelves and my desk over there, which was long overdue, really needed to be done. I feel so much better after doing it. Don't worry, if you're interested in that, it's gonna be its own video. But I did read some. Not much, but I did read some. I got to about page 50 in this book, and it's going well so far. It's a lot easier to read than I thought it would be. I thought it might be really difficult with all the names and places that I am unfamiliar with, because I know next to nothing about Tin Pan Alley, unfortunately. But it's been really easy to read, really easy to grasp. I'm enjoying it so far. It's going well. I think I can get to page 100 today, if not a little bit further than that. Definitely expect to finish it by Saturday, maybe even Friday night. This book is also going incredibly well. I got to page 500 finally in it last night. It's only 612 pages total, so 112 to go. I think I may even finish it today, just to get it out of the way. Plus, I mean, I am really enjoying it, so it won't be that much of a task to actually finish it. Overall, I have this many pages to go, and I have read this many pages so far. I'll come back at the end of the day with a quick update about where I am in these two books. Hey, how y'all doing? It is officially June 12th, the day after my birthday, and I decided now would be a good time to end the vlog and give y'all my final thoughts on the books that I read during this challenge. My overall thoughts on this challenge are I'm glad I did it. I finally got to some books that have been haunting my TBR for a while. I learned a lot, I enjoyed every single one of them, and I decluttered my shelves a little bit. I ended up getting rid of every single book except for The Fifth Heart, which I decided in the middle of reading that I was gonna keep. There was a moment at the end where I thought I may give it away because I was like, I'm really enjoying this, but someone still may enjoy it more, but in the end it won out and I ended up keeping it. The other three I did give away, sell, hand off, however you want to put it. I'm gonna try to make these two reviews short, quick, and to the point, because this vlog has gone on long enough, and I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry. If you're still here, thank you, you're incredible. So, The Fifth Heart. Really enjoyed this. Again, 4 out of 5 stars. A little bit over 4, actually, but not quite 5 out of 5 stars. It's a crossover, as I said, between Sherlock Holmes and Henry James coming to America, and Sherlock Holmes is trying to solve the mystery of Clover Adams' death. Antics ensue. I really love the writing of this book. It is so descriptive that I oftentimes had to reread, not because it was difficult, but because I wanted to make sure I was absorbing everything that the author was saying and picturing it properly in my mind, just because the language was so beautiful. He did that really well. I really love that. I can see how some people may be annoyed by that, so if long, picturesque descriptions are not your thing, maybe his writing style isn't for you. The dialogue was also really funny. I really love the writing style in this book. I thought the pacing was really good. It was slow to begin with, but it quickly picked up and then it just didn't let go, at least in my opinion. It had me page turning, especially within the last 100 pages. I just said, I can't stop, I need to finish this, I need to find out what happens. The characters were also really well fleshed out, I believe. And it was really cool to see how they really were interwoven in pretty much every single way. Ways you don't even realize, obviously, because it's kind of a mystery, until the end of this book. Speaking of characters, the things I have to say about this book, that are just two little side tangents, I'll make them quick. Two of the main characters in this book are my relatives, John and Clara Hay. Yes, John Hay as in the former Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln. John and Clara are two of Henry James' best friends. So they are two of the main characters in this book. So it's a little weird reading about my relatives as main characters and seeing them talk and act. It's just kind of weird. It was kind of awesome, but also weird, because I'm like, that's my great. Anyway, that's a side tangent. But it was really cool. I actually really enjoyed it. Not that I will be seeking out other books that include my relatives in a fictional narrative, but it was kind of cool. Another thing, Sherlock Holmes mentions that he was in a theatrical Shakespeare troupe in America for a year performing for the Sioux Native American tribe. He mentions to Henry James they tried performing comedies, but the Native Americans were actually more fond of the tragedies. Hamlet, Macbeth, and Titus Andronicus specifically. Nothing wrong with that, per se. What I just find funny is that I do have Native American heritage. My grandmother was full-blooded Apache. And my 3 favorite Shakespeare plays are Hamlet, Macbeth, and Titus Andronicus. So, felt a little bit called out by that. It's really more funny than actually calling out, but when I read that I was like, that's... The story is a historical fictional narrative mixed with a mystery. Obviously, Sherlock Holmes. If you enjoy Sherlock Holmes, I think you'll enjoy this book. It never felt heavy, it was always quite light. Even with as much detail and interwoven story as it has, it never felt overbearing, which I think can bog a lot of people down whenever they want to pick up a mystery or want to pick up a historical narrative or historical fictional narrative. This book never felt overbearing in that sense, so if you're worried about that, don't be. See if your local library has it. Support your local library. And the second book I do not have anymore because I sold it. But it was the B-side, The Death of Tin Pan Alley and The Rebirth of the Great American Song by Ben Yagoda. This book I also gave a 4 out of 5. Thought about keeping it, but I didn't, because I knew that I would never really use it again. I definitely enjoyed this book but it took me a little bit to get through. It took a little bit of slogging to get through. I'm definitely glad that I read this book. It helped fill in a large gap in my musical knowledge. I knew next to nothing except the basics when I started this book. Ben Yagoda does a really good job of guiding the reader through this timeline of Tin Pan Alley from the very beginnings of it to its death and then where we stand today. The profiles of the people he mentions, of which there are a lot, were done perfectly in depth. Again, nothing too heavy, nothing overbearing. It was a well done, well researched study and timeline into this era and these people and this industry. I wish I had had more time to actually read this book and absorb it, because as I was going through it, I really felt the pressure of the challenge, because I ended up finishing it the day before my birthday. I didn't want to have to wake up and try and finish it, so I was rushing to finish it. I actually read 150 pages in one day. Definitely a lot of information to absorb. I wish I had taken my time with it. So many name drops, as you can imagine, because it's a timeline and a study. So album names, song names, writer names, musicians. And my memory is not the greatest in the first place, so I did end up forgetting a lot as I was reading. And then I would reread the names or titles again, and it would hit me that I had read that before, and the context would all flood in. I definitely don't feel like a walking Wikipedia of knowledge about Tin Pan Alley after this. If you asked me specific things about the book, I wouldn't be able to tell you right now, but that's just how my brain works. Though ultimately this book did what I wanted it to do, which was fill in my gaps of knowledge, and I know that sounds counterintuitive compared to what I just said if I can't really tell you anything specific from this book off the top of my head, but what I wanted it to accomplish was sort of a passive knowledge rather than an active knowledge. What I mean by that, I don't have active recall on it. Like, it's not something that, again, I can bring off the top of my head. It's sort of like if you asked me what I had for breakfast last Tuesday morning. Won't be able to tell you. I won't be able to tell you the names of some of the greatest writers of Tin Pan Alley right off the top of my head. I won't be able to tell you some of their greatest songs, or the movies they worked on, or the musicals they worked on. But if I'm out and about in conversation, or reading something else, one of those names or titles comes up, something is going to trigger in my brain. One of those synapses are going to start firing, and I'm gonna remember, or at least say, oh yes, I have heard of that before. So if someone mentions a musical that was mentioned in the book, my brain is gonna fire that synapse and be like, oh yeah, I remember about that. And that's what I wanted it to do ultimately. Just to have those synapses in waiting, have that passive knowledge in waiting. That way I can react on it if I ever see it again, and possibly make more connections or learn more about it. And then when I do, those synapses will be reinforced and I'll know more and I'll learn more. That's ultimately what I mean by passive knowledge, and to that end, it was really successful in my book. That's ultimately why I gave the book away as well, because I think someone with an actual interest in the time period, not just wanting to learn more about it for the sake of a gap in knowledge, will get so much out of it because it was so well written. And like the other books, the author was clearly very passionate about it, which is always an A+. I was halfway tempted to make a Spotify playlist or a playlist about all the songs and albums. Then I realized there's probably a ton already out there. I can always go look them up if I'm so inclined, but in the end, it's not my type of music. I love to learn about it. I love to know about it. Again, the passive knowledge, it'll be great to have, but it's not something I'm ever going to find myself personally actively thinking about or seeking out or listening to. It's just not my thing. So all in all, this challenge was totally successful in my book. I'm so happy I did it. It was a spur of the moment idea. I'm a little bit surprised I was able to read that much and get that much done, but it was such a good feeling to actually read those books, get them finished, and learn a lot in the process. As I mentioned, I did a little bit of book shopping, and most of my birthday presents turned out to be books. Shocker. But we didn't get to do quite everything that we originally planned to on the day of my birthday. Next weekend, when we have more time, we're actually going to do more shopping for birthday presents, aka book shopping. Not to mention some of my presents apparently are still in the mail, so once everything is all together, I will be for sure making a total book birthday haul and making that its own video. I can't wait to do more challenges in the future. I definitely want to do some 24-hour readathons or different book kind of readathons. I always think they're so fun, and my little tiny pea brain loves a challenge. If you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. I really appreciate each and every one of y'all. And if y'all haven't heard it from anyone today, I love you. Love and peace. Until tomorrow.